ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोर्श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायिने कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामिने गौरत्विषे नमः। पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतश्चार्थे भिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्म हृदय आदि कवये मुह्यन्ते यत्सूरयः। तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमय यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, verse number 4. This is King Parikshit Maharaj asking question to Sukadeva Goswami, because Sukadeva said that Priyavrata, he was a realized person and he was a devotee of or disciple of Narada, yet he was in the family life. So this created a doubt in the mind of Parikshit that why he has to take to family life. He was a great devotee and renounced. So that's what he asked the question. And in this verse also he speaks the same thing. He says, Sansoyam Mahan Brahman Daragara Sutadishu Saktasyat Siddhirabhut Krishne Chaimatirachyuta. He said that, my dear Brahman, I have this doubt that how is it that Priyavrata, who was attached to wife, kingdom, children, wealth and so on, that he became perfect and he had infallible mind or mind infallibly fixed on Krishna. Because mind is only one, and if it is attached to family, cannot be attached to Krishna. If it is attached to Krishna, cannot be attached to family. Cannot have attachment on both sides. So how did this happen, that who person who was very much attached to his family, and because he ruled for a very long time and he had nice sons and wife and very big kingdom. So how could he have such a mind, Mati Achyuta, that his mind was undeviated from Krishna? This is the question. भवतु वा कथंचिद अपराधवशात् किंतु तत्रपि तस्य सिद्धि कृष्णासक्तिश्च न च्युता इति कथम. So he says that sometimes it happens that person who is very devoted to God and has no material intentions, no material desires, engaged always in devotion to God, he may commit an offense to some great devotee or offense to God, and as an outcome of offense, then he develops desires and he may become deviated, or he may stray away from the path of devotion and take to materialistic ways. But if that happens, then the mind is not going to remain fixed on God anymore. So just as we read this story of this Rishi, Kandu, he was meditating, but then he became attracted to the Apsara, and then he completely forgot about his meditation. So he says that even if I accept that it is possible, first he was raising a question that how is it possible that somebody whose mind is fixed on God can take to materialistic entanglements. And then he himself is giving the answer that it is possible because of an offense, but the question still remains that how can such a person attain perfection unless he gives up that entanglement, that attachment, and takes to the devotional service again. So this is his question. So Sukadeva Goswami, he answers Sri Shuka Uvacha. And here in 5th canto, there are many prose statements. All of Bhagavatam is in poetic form, slokas. But in 5th canto, there are many passages in prose form. So this is prose. Badhamuktam, he said, first thing he said is, yes, you are right. You have said rightly. Sometimes when you hear a question, to answer the question, first you accept the question and then give the answer. So he says, what you say is acceptable. Bhagavata uttam slokasya Srimad Charnarvinda Makananda Rasa Aveshit Chetasaha Bhagavat Paramhansa Daita Katham Kinchid Antaray Vihatam Swam Sivatam Padmim Na Prayan Hinvanti. So he says that it is true that a person whose mind is absorbed in the nectar coming from the lotus feet of the Lord, such a person, Bhagavat Paramhansa Dait Katham Swam Siv Tamam Padvim Na Prayana Hinvanti. He never gives up attachment to hearing the stories which are the grace of great devotees. Says yes, generally it is seen. He is not saying that he never gives up. He says prayana, that mostly, generally, it never happens because these stories are most auspicious. But kinchid antaraya vihatam. If they are not obstructed by some offense. So offense is the only problem which can cause an obstacle to bhakti. And one of the things here in Bhagavatam, we read in the previous chapter also, in the whole story of Dasa, there is talk of offense. And you will read here again about Bharat. The story will come here. So this topic is very much discussed about offense, because this is a very important principle to be understood in devotion. So this is what he is saying, that because of offense such a thing is possible, otherwise yes, I agree with you. This is what he says. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written a very nice comment. He says, Angikritya pariharati badhamiti. He says that after accepting the doubt, he dispels it. Atmaramasya grihe aranta grihasaktasya cha krishna shakti ite ubhay na sambhavata iti satyam. He says it is true that one who is Atmaram, he cannot be a Griharam. And one who is a Griharam cannot be an Atmaram. So Atmaram means one who is attached to God, to Krishna, and Griharam means one who is attached to house, which means material pleasures. So he says, this is definitely true, that one who has attachment to house, family life, he cannot have attachment to Krishna. Tadapi ati mehtam durvitarke charitanam kapi kadachit ki vishya-shakti tvaya na vishwasniya. Iti aha Bhagavati. He says, still, although this is a general principle, but there is some exception to that. So that exception he is speaking, because this is a case of such an exception. The general rule is there that a devotee never takes to material enjoyment. So he says that although this is the principle, but those people who are highly elevated and whose behavior is beyond reasoning, it is not possible for an ordinary person to encompass their mind, comprehend their activities. He says, for such people, Vishya-shakti tvaya na vishwasniya. You should never believe that such a person cannot have Vishya-shakti sometimes. He's putting it other way around. Kadap kapi kadachit ki Vishya-shakti tvaya na vishwasniya. That sometimes they may have Vishya-shakti, it is not to be believed. So for that he answers, Avishit chetaso janaha bhagavati bhagavata sambandhani cha sau paramhansanam dairita priyatama chaya katha tam kinchin matrena antrayena vignena vihatam sthigati kritam na prayena hinvanti na tajanti. Says that those people whose minds are fixed on the katha of the Lord, Bhagavati, Bhagavata Sambandhani, that which is related with the devotees and with the Lord, that katha which is very dear to the Paramhansas. Says that kinchin matrena antrayana vignena vihatam sthagiti kritam na prayana hanvanti natajanti. That sometimes their flow of katha, it may be blocked, but they never give it up. That there may be some break because of some offense, but it is never abandoned completely. Kidrishim swam sivatamam padmin iti. Because this katha is highly auspicious. Tat kathaeva bhaktanam padvim sukhamaya vartma tayaeva gamyo bhagavan iti. So this katha is called here as a highway or a road, because it says that this katha is the road for the highways or pleasurable path by which they reach the Lord. So in other words, he has said both things. He says that the offenses they can block, but even when they block for great devotees, they don't really completely give it up. That means it may appear like that they have become entangled, but they don't become totally absorbed in matter. So now he quotes a verse from 10th Canto. Nanu tvaya bhigupta vicharanti nirbhaya vinayakanika murdhasu prabho ityadi ukte bhakta namantrayo nasti eva. So he says, but we have read in 10th Canto that for devotees there is no blockage by anything. This is a verse spoken by the Devas when they were praying to Mother Devaki. And in the earlier verse they were speaking about the Jnanis who do not take to devotion, and therefore they fall down even from their high position. Yanyarvindaksha vimukta mayinas tvayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhaya aruya krichena param padam tata patanti adha nadriti yusmadam. So they are saying that, oh Lord, that those who think that they are vimukta manina, they are very liberated, but asta bhavad, they don't have bhavin, they don't have devotion for you. Therefore they are called avishuddha buddha. Their intelligence is not pure, because one who is not devoted to God, such a person must be devoted to something which is not God, because we are all devoted to something. Devoted means attachment, faith, belief. Shraddha mayavayam purusha yajat shraddha sayavasa. Sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata. Everybody has some shraddha, some attachment, some devotion according to the constitution of their heart. There is nobody in this world who does not have some attachment to something. It may be attachment to body, it may be attachment to some concept, some philosophy, some idea. But everybody is attached to something which is very central to their life. Their life rotates around that. So one who is not devoted to God, he will be devoted to something else. And because he will be devoted to something else, then his intelligence is not pure, because God is the only pure thing. So therefore they are called here as avishuddha buddhaya, that they are of impure intelligence. And whatever they will achieve, they will fall down from that, because their achievement will be all material. So Aruhya Krichrena, and you achieve with great endeavor, work very hard to achieve. then you lose it. So only cause is anadrit yusmadengana, because they have disregarded the feet of the Lord. So this is the situation of materialistic people, that they work very hard, they achieve something, and then they end up in frustration. They end up losing whatever they have attained. But about devotees, he said that Tvaya Vigupta Vichranti Nirvaya. He says, but your devotees, they are protected by you, and therefore they wander fearlessly. They have no fear. Vinayakani Kupam Bhavadhasu. And they have any obstacles, they put their foot on the obstacles and walk. Which means that obstacles really do not block their progress. So, Tathanate Madhava Tavika Kuchi Bhrashanti Marga Tvai Bhadra. Therefore they never fall down from their path. So even here in the material world, people have used the previous verse to prove that you fall down, but they forget what the next verse is saying. See, the next verse is very clearly saying, Tathanate Madhava Tavaka Kvachid Bhrasyanti. Oh Madhava, Tavaka means those who belong to you, your devotees. Kvachid means ever, Bhrasyanti means fall down. They never ever fall down. And the reason is given, Tvai Baddha Sahrida. Because their Sahrida, their love, their heart is bound to you. Hrida means heart. So how can they fall down?
Which verse is this?
11:2:33. Sorry, 10:2. The Stuti of Devas, Garbha Stuti. And Krishna was in the womb of Devaki. So this is his doubt. He says, how you are saying that the devotees can also have obstacles? Here in the prayer it is said that they don't have obstacles. Rather, they put their foot on the head of the obstacle and go further. So he answers Satyam. He says, yes, you are right. He also accepts this. But then he answers. He says, Kala karmadi hetuko asau nasti eva. He says that devotees do not have any obstacle coming from time or karma. Because these previous people, they have obstacle as a result of their own karma. So he says that, which means that nothing material can cause an obstacle to a devotee. Because they are not under the control of karma. They are not under the control of time. Time is also material, karma is material. And they are engaged in transcendental devotional service. So this is not possible that they can be blocked by anything. So he says, yes, it is true. And that's what the verse is saying, that they put their feet on the head of these obstacles caused by kal, karma, etc. Kintu antarayo hi bhaktanam dvividha. He says, but for devotees, the obstruction can come in two ways. There are only two possibilities that they can have obstacle in their life. And what are those two? Number one, Mahad Aparad Hetuko and Bhagavad Ichcha Hetuko. This is a very, very important statement he is making. He says that for them obstruction can come either because of offense to another great devotee or by the will of the Lord. Lord may also put an obstacle for his own devotee because he wants to increase their love, or he wants to give some teaching, some instruction to people. So sometimes you make your own person as an object to teach to others. Like Krishna took Arjuna and put him in illusion. And then he spoke Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita was not spoken for Arjuna. It was spoken for the Arjunas who will come later on. So it is for humanity, for people like us. But he is using his own devotee for that. So he is creating an obstacle for Arjuna, putting in his mind this idea. So Lord also does that. So these are the only two ways. But there is a difference between the two. First one is problematic, second one is not a problematic. तत्र महद अपराधो ही समुचित कष्ट भोगेन चिरकालत एव तस्यैव महत कृपया सद्य एव च सम्यति. So he says, if one does an offense to a great devotee of the Lord, then either one has to suffer the reaction for a long time, or one can become free from it by the blessing of the person who is offended. There are only two ways. There is no atonement for this, there is nothing. Either one has to get the reaction, or that person who one has offended, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, then one can go and ask forgiveness and try to please that. And if he is pleased, then by his grace the offense will be wiped away immediately. It will not take any time. Otherwise one may have to suffer for a very long time. Yatha dvividadinam rahugana adinam. So he gives two examples here. One is the example of dvivida and other is the example of rahugana. So he does not elaborate on them. The story of rahugana will come later on. And story of dvivida was a monkey who was in the army of Lord Ramachandra. So he is described in Ramayana, and he also participated in the battle against Ravana. But it is described that this Dvivida, although he was devoted to Lord Rama, he was offensive to Lakshmana. And because of this offense, he has to suffer for a long time. Then he became a friend of Narkasura. Because that's what offense will do. It will take you to wrong association. And then he became offensive to Lord Balaram in Krishna Lila. And then he has to be killed by Balaram. So this is the example of creating an offense to a great devotee of the Lord. Lakshmana is a devotee of Lord Ram. Of course, he is also Vishnu Tattva. And the other example is the example of Rahugana. King Rahugana was going for spiritual instruction, and he to meet some sage in the forest, and he was being carried by 4 people. In the olden days they used to have human cars, like we have car with 4 wheels. Instead of wheels they used to have 4 men walking. So one of his car had a puncture while walking. One guy fell sick and he did not have a spare tire. So he asked to look, he was a king, he asked, look if some man is around. And there they saw Jad Bharat, who was a very great devotee of Lord, completely detached, wandering, uncared, absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord. So they saw him and he was quite healthy looking. And they said, come, you have to do some service. And he came and said, you have to carry this palanquin. And he said, okay. So he started carrying it. But he was not used to, because when you carry this palanquin, you have to walk in rhythm. So he was in a different rhythm. He knew what rhythm means, but not this type of rhythm. So he was in his own raga, and he could not walk along with these other people. So if you don't walk in rhythm, then it will give jerk to the person who is sitting above, because there is no shock absorbers in this car. So the king, he said, "What are you doing?" My head is getting hit every time to the side. So these three were his known servant, and they said, "Lord, what can we do? This fourth man is not walking properly." So the king told him that, "Come on, keep pace with them." So he said, "Okay." But he was looking at the ground and he didn't want to step on the ants or animals, so he was trying to avoid them, and he was not bothered about keeping pace with others. So he continued in his own way, and then king got very angry, and then he spoke very sarcastically to Jad Bharat, that actually you are not carrying this palanquin, you are this and you are that, you are very fat and this is a big burden for you. He spoke like that. So King Rahugana, when Jad Bharat heard it, first he kept quiet, then king was then getting angry, and he said that you are not afraid of Yamaraj or what. So then he spoke. And he said, "Yes, it's a fact, I am not afraid of Yamaraj, because I am beyond Yamaraj." And then he started speaking very philosophically. So when king heard that, his blood turned into water. He got so scared that he jumped off the palanquin and fell at his feet, because he realized that this is no ordinary man speaking, and I made some huge blunder by utilizing him to carry my palanquin and sitting on his head. So he begged his pardon immediately. And Jad Bharat was, although he was offended, but he forgave him. And then there are very nice instructions. So this is an example where offense was done, but it was cleaned up immediately because the king pleased him. And then of course Jad Bharat told him that once upon a time I was also a king, because he was a king, probably bigger than Rahugana. So these are the two examples which are given where one has to, because Dvivida, he did not ask forgiveness, so he has to suffer the offense. And Rahugana, he asked for forgiveness, so he did not suffer the offense. So these are the examples when someone actually commits an offense. And the second was when Lord himself creates an obstacle for his devotee. So he has his own purpose. Like Kunti Devi is saying that, "Give me obstacles." Right? She's saying that, "Let me have problems." Again and again. Bhagavad Ichchacha Swabhakta Sadachara Shikshnaartha. So Vipada Santu Na Saswat Tatra Tatra Jagat Guru. So said that let there be Vipada, Vipatti, obstacles for me again and again. Bhavta Darshanam Yat Sad Na Punarabhav Darshanam. When the problems are there, then I see you, and then I don't see the world. So for her this was favorable. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that when Lord gives obstacle, or obstacles come by the will of the Lord, then that is to show how a devotee behaves. Because when problems come, when difficulties come, we don't know how to behave. We may react. We also try to take revenge from others, get angry, upset, forget about our devotional service. So he shows that when problems come on his own devotees, how they react to that or how they take this, so that other people can learn from their example. This is his desire. That's why we see that devotees have problems. Otherwise, why should devotees suffer? It is said that when someone takes to devotion, he becomes free from karma, free from problems, he is free from even prarabdha karma. So he says for teaching, तदुत्थो विघ्नस्तु प्रेम वर्धना अर्थे एव. And not only that, this is to increase the love of their devotees. Because when the devotees are in trouble, then they become more concentrated, more absorbed in thoughts of Lord, in the service of Lord. When materialistic people fall into trouble, then they take to some ignorant activities, tamasic activities. They may go for a drink, for a bar, to watch a movie, become depressed. So, but when a devotee is in trouble, he thinks more of God, more than normal. So this increases their love for the Lord. So as Krishna, he was in the Ras Leela and then he disappeared. So there it is said prasadaya, and this was a blessing. Because then Gopi's love increased so much that they were even enacting the pastimes of Krishna. They were so much identifying with Krishna that they started acting as if they are Krishna. So that is prema vardhan, to increase the love. Yatha Bharatadina. So Bharat Maharaj, he was a very great devotee, had his ashram, Dasa, on the bank of Gandaki river in Nepal. Right, Prahlad?
Yeah.
And there he was fully absorbed in the worship of Shalagram. But then he became attached to a deer cub, baby deer, and forgot everything. So much that while dying he was only thinking of the deer, and because of that he became a deer in his next life. So this was an obstacle for him, this deer, but this happened by the will of the Lord. Because there is no other mention there that he offended anybody. Unless there was something from the past life, but we don't know. So he says that this happened by the will of the Lord. And that increased his love more. So much that even as a deer, he remembered. Although as a deer he was born in India, but he remembered his past life and he was eating dry leaves. So renounced, he didn't want to even eat the green leaves and green grass, thinking I will become attached to the taste. And eating these green leaves, he went back to Nepal, to original place. And there he gave up his life remembering Krishna. And then he was born at Jad Bharat. So now, this is the principle he has explained, and its application is Priyavrata. So what is his situation, Priyavrata, that we have to know? Is it because of offense he has committed, or is it will of the Lord? So that he explains. Says Tatra Priyavratasya aparadha bhavad bhagavad ichcha nibandhana eva vignoyam. So in case of Priyavrata, there was no offense created. He did not displease anybody. He was a very nice boy from the very childhood. Even as a small boy, he was very renounced. He was not interested in material pleasures, although he was a prince. And that's why he left home and went to Himalayas. Himalaya was famous for great saints, sadhus, yogis, devotees, they all were going there. So he went and he lived there. That's why Uttanapad became the king, who was younger to Priyavrata. Priyavrata and Uttanapad were brothers, and Priyavrata should become the king because he is the elder brother, and as per the law, the elder becomes the king. But it is Uttanapad whose story we read, and he had two sons, Dhruva and who was the other one? Thomas? No.
उत्तानापाद उत्तानापाद को छोड़ो दुईटा कोथे उत्तानापाद का छोड़ा ध्रुव उत्तम
Uttama, son of Sulechi. So he had two sons, and then his dynasty, we read the whole story. Priyavrata was very renounced, so there was no question of offending anybody. So therefore he says that this was caused by the will of the Lord. Means there was no offense, but Lord wanted that he comes and becomes the king and shows by his personal example that how a devotee can remain in the material world and still not forget Krishna. Because there has to be some examples also for people to see. तत्र गुण बुद्ध्यापि भक्तैः क्वापि ममता न कर्तव्या इति यथा भरतस्य मृग पोषण प्रदर्शनया स्वभक्ता भगवता शिक्षिता तथा महदाज्ञा ही भक्ति अनुपयोगिनी अपि भक्तैः प्रतिपालनीया एव इति प्रियव्रत कर्तृक ब्रह्माज्ञा प्रतिपालन प्रदर्शन शिक्षिता. So he says that Bharata, he got, and Priyavrat, both are example of where Lord willed that they take to materialistic life. So what is he trying to teach from these two examples? He explains that. He says from the example of Bharat Maharaj, he is taught that one should not become affectionate even gun buddhyapi. Says a devotee should not become affectionate even as a matter of compassion or anything like that to anybody other than God, not even dogs. So you become attached, then this is what happens. Because he became attached to the deer, and then he has to take 2 more births. So he says that bhakta hi kvapi mamata na kartavya. Bhakta devotee should not have his mamata. Mamata means affection in anything else, even if it is good. Not at all. So he says this is shown by the example of Bharata, where he was taking care of the deer baby. So he says by this Lord has given an instruction to his devotees. They should learn from this. And what is he teaching from the example of Priyavrata? So he says by that he is teaching that if there is an instruction given by a great person which is not contrary to devotion, it can be useful for devotion. Bhakti anupyogni, or it may not be directly related to devotion. Anupyogni means that it's not directly useful in bhakti, but the order is coming from a great person, then a devotee should follow that. So Priyavrata, he was ordered by Brahma himself that he should marry. Lord Nityananda was also ordered, he was a sannyasi, and Lord Chaitanya ordered him to marry, he married. So usually it is very, what you call, a big fall down or a deviation if a sannyasi takes to married life. But if a great person like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, then better follow that. So therefore Priyavrata, he followed the order of Brahma. And this did not create any trouble for him. So these are the two instructions which are given here. This is a very important commentary he has written, very practical for the devotees who are serious about devotion. They should learn from this. So then he continues explaining more about Priyavrata, that what actually happened. Why did he take to this? So he will describe this whole episode of Priyavrata and Brahma meeting. So I'll stop here if there is any question.
Well, it seems like what makes us make offenses is the ego.
Yes.
So we have to be very present, very aware continuously. It's just like a meditation.
Yes.
That's the only way.
Yeah, because if when we are absorbed in our body, then we commit offense. Because for then our body, our ego, our pride, that becomes very important. And anyone who does anything to that, then we offend that person.
This devotional service, when devotee experience the inphenomenal bliss and he experience that transcendental bliss, and but even after experiencing that bliss, that it is completely way different. The material pleasure and spiritual pleasure is completely different. He understands. Even after understanding, again he becomes attached to the material pleasure or opulence. So why is that?
Yeah, that's what he said. That is possible only because of the offense. If one offense means offending devotee or God or devotion itself. It means one side you want bhakti, and the other side you are creating something which is against bhakti. It's like you try to burn fire. Fire is already burning, right? So you put anything in it, it will burn. But if you pour water on it, then fire will be extinguished. So this offense is like pouring water into the fire. So why it happens? Because of not being careful. When it happens by will of the Lord, then of course one does not really become materially absorbed. Instead it is only to increase the love.
It was mentioned offense against great devotees. You had read great devotees. So how important is this word great, and where to draw the line? What is the difference between offending a small devotee and a...
Best is not to offend. If offense is dangerous, and by saying great means with great devotees you have to be more careful. So, not to offend anybody. That's why Mahaprabhu said, Amanina Manadena, and giving respect to everyone. Otherwise then we have to draw a line, this guy I can offend. And then if you have a mind like this that you can offend this guy, then someday you'll also offend the other one.
I was mainly interested in whether there are also reactions, even if it's a small devotee. So
Yeah, because you have to understand what is an offense. Offense means any action which is contrary to bhakti. So if you are doing an action which is contrary to bhakti, what will be the reaction? What will be the result? Big or small, that depends how contrary it is. So why do that?
And sometimes in spiritual circles, devotees are almost irrationally afraid of committing offense to such an extreme that certain things are allowed to happen because of this fear. So how to balance a healthy...
Well, if someone has a responsible position, then he has to correct if someone is making a mistake. That is not an offense. You have to understand what an offense is. If the intention is to correct that person who is making a mistake, then how can that be an offense? Even if that person becomes upset, what can you do? You are wrong. And your intention is to rectify, because it's your responsibility. If you don't do your responsible job, that is another problem. So then you may not offend the devotee, but then you are becoming implicated in the wrong deed which he is doing. Because you are also party to that.
Actually, we have always to be aware if it is the ego reacting, or if it is a real...
Right. And it is not a difficult thing. If you are aware, you know it. It's not very difficult.
You have to be very sincere, yes.
That's what I'm saying. If you are sincere, if you are aware of yourself, then you know it, that it is coming because of my pride, or it is, I'm actually doing a proper action.
But
There's another thing that it may come out of pride and you want to show it, that actually I'm doing it to correct.
Yeah, that's a fact.
But you will know it. Others may not know.
But one can have at least self-respect, can...
Yeah, self-respect, yeah. That's not, there's nothing wrong with self-respect.
Sometimes we also see that offenses, say a person commits an offense to another devotee, and then he realizes, I made an offense and I must beg forgiveness. And so he apologizes. But he apologizes because he knows that's the only way to rectify himself, but it's an insincere apology. So if the apology is not sincere, if one just does it as an act, then it doesn't actually have the effect. No, it means that the person offended has to actually forgive.
Yes, he has to actually forgive, and the person who is asking for apology has to feel that he has made an offense and wants to rectify it sincerely. If he's only making a show, then means he's really not asking for an apology. He has to actually feel. That's why it is a matter
Remorse.
of... Yeah, you can't cheat in bhakti.
Yes.
It's not possible. Because it's related with your consciousness. So if you have not rectified your consciousness, then you can verbally say it, the problem remains there.
You said that there is no other object of affection other than the Lord, and we should not give or expect affection from anybody else other than Him. So what about in devotional circles? What about when we live among people who wants to take devotional service and
Who want to?
I mean, people who are practicing Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
So, if we see them as servants of the Lord, there is no problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That is affection to God only. You see them, you give affection because they are servant of Lord.
Yeah.
So your affection is to God.
So then we don't deny the
You
affection.
already saw that you serve the world, seeing this as His manifestation, and there is no problem. You see it independent, then you are in trouble, like Bharat Maharaj. Hare Krishna.